Before I go to the main part of my paper today, I would just like to tell you a little bit why I'm teaching English legal history, and more precisely why I'm teaching in English at the University of Poland. This what I will be telling you now is generally associated with my home institution, University of Łódź, but frankly saying, at most of the Polish universities, similar programs can be seen and observed. So the foreign language courses are predominantly designed for the Erasmus students who come to Poland, but not only. Of course, after Brexit, we are now more and more interested in Turing scheme students, unfortunately, in which currently we don't have students from the United Kingdom. Although before the Brexit, we had one agreement with University of Nottingham, and we are right now in the process of rearranging that agreement according to the Turing scheme. In addition, students who are participating in foreign language courses are also students who came to Łódź in the different mobility schemes, which are based on the bilateral agreements. In this case, mostly our students came from Central Asia, from the former Soviet republics, like Kazakhstan, for example. But we have also students from India, for example. And of course, these courses are also available for, I would call them, Polish students, that is those students who study in Łódź on the regular basis. They are, majority of them are Polish students, in fact, but we have also Belarusian, Lithuanian, or Ukrainian students who attend the courses in a full 5-year program. How many courses do we have right now designed in this pattern in Łódź? This depends every year, but right now we have 32 courses in autumn term and 35 in spring term. So it is almost 70 courses, or around 70 courses designed in foreign languages. Majority of them are delivered in English, but there are some courses in French, German, and Russian as well. If we will talk about the number of students, the COVID pandemic changed this situation quite dramatically. In the year before pandemic started in 2019, 2020, we had more than 80 students. The previous year, 2018-19, we had almost 100 foreign students who were attending classes in Łódź. Right now, we are rebuilding those statistics. Last year, it was again about 80 students in one term or full year programs. This year, only in winter semester, we have almost 40 students. Now, as to my experience, as I told you before, I would like to tell you what I'm teaching and what kind of classes those are. So first of all, I teach English legal history both in English and in Polish. In case of English, I'm teaching a subject called Historical Introduction to the System of English Law. This is a course for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th year students. This is an optional module. It is optional, although according to the rules that we have in Łódź, every student has to attend at least one class in which is in English or other foreign language. So this is an obligatory course in this sense, although they can choose between different courses that we offer. In addition, in the past, I have also taught the methodology and legal research common law perspective. It was also a class taught in English. It was designed for the PhD students, and we were focusing there predominantly on the methodology. This class is currently suspended, but it is connected with the changes and reforms of the doctoral studies, which occurred in Poland a couple of years ago. And in Polish, I'm also teaching on English legal history. It is an equivalent to the first course, which I mentioned to you. It is known as Prawo angielskie, Historia, Tradycja, Współczesność, which can be roughly translated as English law, history, tradition, modernity. This is also a course designed for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th year students. I mean, those students who are based in Łódź. And in addition to those free courses, since the next term, I will offer also American legal history course, which is also divided into two forms of language delivery, so in English and in Polish. And my idea here is that in the fall semester, students would be able to participate in the English legal history classes, and in the summer semester, they would continue their, I would say, common law education by attending in American legal history classes. Because I'm teaching the English legal history in Łódź for almost 8 years right now, I have certain reflections and observations, and they are, by me, I would say, called predominantly the dilemmas that I had to stand against during my preparation of those classes those 8 years ago, and those are the problems that I have currently. Also, every year they are repeated, and I have to struggle with them every year, and this is why I'd like to tell you about them today. So the first dilemma that I have when I'm teaching English legal history is the aim of this teaching. There's no doubt that it is not an ordinary situation when I'm teaching the legal history of foreign country to the students who, for almost 100%, will never in the future be working in the common law world, or this is not very likely. So why to teach English legal history? My first and dominant reason is the fact that we can observe in Poland still a growing interest in Anglo-American legal tradition. And this is happening still despite Brexit. But it is also important to note that despite this growing interest, there is still a lack of sufficient knowledge about English law and English legal history. And this is unfortunately observable not only in casual discussions that the lawyers have, but it is also observable in the academic works, in the articles, chapters, books that are published in Polish legal market. And this is one of the reasons of this is the fact that the number of people who would be able to call themselves experts on English law or English legal history more precisely in Poland is very small. Although there are many scholars who try to write something about English law or American law as something that would be additional to their main field of research. And for this reason, I can encounter quite often some disputable statements about the English law or American law. So this is one of the aims that I have when I decided a couple of years ago to start to teach English legal history. Another problem or dilemma that I have during those teachings is the question of the understanding of different pathways of developing legal ideas. There's no doubt that the development of continental legal systems and Anglo-American legal tradition are very different. They are comparable, but they are different. And I think this is some of the problems that we have during those classes. Because as I told you before, the class is designed predominantly for the students who are in the mid or at the end of their legal education. So they are already accustomed with certain way of thinking about the law, but this is the continental way of thinking. And this is another dilemma which I encounter, that it is very often very hard to understand by the students that certain concepts, certain ideas that are present in the law could evolve differently than they evolved in continental legal tradition. And finally, I think it is quite important to say that the talking about history of law is, at least at my faculty, quite, I don't want to say risky, but it is definitely something not very popular. And it is not only connected with the fact that legal history, not only in Poland, but I think all around the world, is currently not so popular as we all would like this subject could be. But at least in Łódź, we have very practically minded students And it is true from the very first year of the legal studies, they are predominantly thinking about the practice of the law. For this reason, the philosophy or history classes that touches the problems of the law are less popular than the positive law or dogmatics. Another dilemma that which is connected with delivering this kind of classes is the selection of subjects. There's no doubt that the subjects always have to be adapted to the students, the group of students that we are teaching. But in this kind of classes, there's the fundamental question whether we want to deliver a general or specific presentation of the foreign legal system and, in addition, its historical development. I have personally decided to present it in a general way, and I'm trying to talk a little bit about different branches of English law, but I know that it is not the only possible way. And for example, Professor Jan Halberda from the Jagiellonian University, who is also teaching English legal history, but he's decided to do this differently. He had chosen only to teach on contracts and torts in English legal history. Another issue that I think is quite important in this context is the fact that we have to remember that we are dealing with the students that are not before trained in English general history. They are not trained in English law terminology. And for this reason, when the course is organized, is structured, quite many time has to be devoted to the problems of terminology, the general history, or the methodology of the common law, before we will start with the proper teaching of the English legal history. The third dilemma, which is quite important here, I think, is the language or linguistic problems. And these problems can be treated in a twofold way. Because from one perspective, it is the problem that is connected with the teaching in English to non-English speakers. And from another perspective, it is the problem of teaching in Polish on English law. And honestly saying, after those 8 years of my experience, I prefer to teach in English on English law than to teach in Polish on English law, because this is always connected with the hard work to translate legal institutions between the systems that are not always, and more, I would even say usually, not similar or the same. In case of teaching in English to non-English speakers, I think the most problematic issue here is the right level of knowledge of English language. As you remember, as I showed you at the beginning of my presentation, my students have very different background. So they came from the Erasmus program. They came from the countries and universities with which has bilateral agreement signed, or we have Polish students. In case of the Erasmus students, the situation is relatively easy because we have a unified system of language qualifications. So we know that they came to Łódź with relatively good knowledge of English, although not always with relatively good knowledge of legal English. But the more problematic situation is connected with those bilateral agreements, because we don't always have tools to check their language before they came to Łódź.
Lukasz, can I just say one more minute to
yeah,
wrap up?
Right. So my final point as to the dilemmas is the lack of sufficient materials and sources that I can refer to. There is no Polish language textbook on English law or English legal history. The closest things to this that we have is Gustav Rosenberg's textbook on English law, which was published in 1944 for the Polish immigrants who were coming to England during the Second World War. We have very limited access to English legal materials in the libraries. Fortunately, most of the university libraries, including University of Łódź main library, have an access to different databases, legal databases like Westlaw, Hein Online, Cambridge Core, JSTOR, or Oxford journals. I know that I have used too much of your patience right now, so in case of any questions, I'm ready to answer in the further part of the panel. Thank you.